Okay, welcome to the November 6th OMR Architecture Meeting. So today we have two topics to discuss. So the first, Erwin will be taking us, or at least leading a discussion on the OMR Clang formatting that we instituted at the beginning of August, to see how that's going. So turn it over to him.
So, yeah, I don't have any formal agenda. I, in offline conversations, know that people had some thoughts about the formatting, the code formatting change, and also the development process. So, seeing as I want to try and also get this done in OpenJ9, and a bunch of people who work on OMR also work on OpenJ9, it's a good place to get feedback so that we can fix the things that need to be fixed in OMR before we try and extend this into downstream projects. So really is just here to hear people's opinions and then take notes and then see what we can do. So if anyone has I personally have not had too much, but I've also not had any big changes that I've had to deal with pre formatting going over to post formatting. So everything that I'm doing now, because I've set up the commit hook and everything, seems seamless, but I don't know if that's true for everyone. So,
well, for me, it's, and I am one of the ones that have had a fairly major commits exist before the formatting, and I'm dealing with it now after the formatting. It did take a while to get used to. It did take a while to get things properly formatted and make the tool happy. But once that happened, and actually it was easier to do that than I was expecting it would be. Like I had to write some scripts for that. It happened relatively easily. Now that it's in that state, I'm not having too much of a difficulty doing that. I guess the challenge I have is that I don't have Clang format installed. I use a MacBook. I don't have it installed on my Mac natively. I'm running it out of a container. So on a Linux machine. Sorry, I should make that clear. So it's a bit of a pain for me to sort of switch between two different systems in order to do to check the formatting. But I am planning on actually installing Clang format natively on my Mac and hopefully removing that extra step in my workflow, which I do find to be a bit painful sometimes. But other than that, not really any major concern. I mean, I'm dealing with it. I like the fact that the code is formatted and we don't have to think about that. I do find that the tool is really nitpicky sometimes, which is really frustrating when you are like got something really close to the edge of the limits, like on the character count, and it insists that this must exist on that line or that line and be indented that far. So, but those frustrations aside, I don't know, I don't have too many negative things to say about it, and I'm getting comfortable with it. So I'd like to hear what their experience has been. May not be as still.
I just had the one experience trying to get Clang format going on my MacBook and was unable to work through the issues in the time that I had available to do it. So I'm still sitting on a large pull request that's not yet been sent through the formatter. Stuck on merge conflict because of
you
that.
use Mac. Did you get Clang format running on your machine, or do you just take the diffs from the?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now I take the diffs just from, because all my PRs have been pretty small. I just take the diffs from the Jenkins pipeline. But I mean, one thing I would recommend is, like, there are tools that will automatically reformat the files for you, right? Instead of having to correct it, like, instead of like, I don't know, I think the way, like, what it sounds like, you guys are running Clang format, looking at the errors, then manually correcting them and then repeating using a Clang format running on your local machine. Is that, or in the virtual machine?
I'm letting it fail.
Yeah.
And whenever it fails, I just take whatever the version was that it produced and just using that.
Yeah, like it'd be nice if we could just have a pre-commit hook that before you commit runs Clang format, and automatically formats every file that you have staged for commit. And then before you do the commit, it does that and then commits
I
automatically.
mean, that's what I do.
Yeah, right.
It's written in one of the docs.
Mhm.
Mind you, it doesn't take care of error handling. So I think Keith pointed out that like if the container wasn't built properly, it just overwrites the file. You don't even notice it because it's in the commit hook.
Mhm.
But I use Clang format directly as a binary and not in the container. And as a
Yeah.
consequence, I can use -i.
Mhm.
And the reason you can't do the container is because the container's permissions are different. But so for me, it's automatic, which is why I haven't noticed it.
Okay, yeah. So I think like, because I don't remember how they did it. Like at Huawei, like it would just automatically do it for you, right?
Just commit hook. I mean, if you look at the doc,
Yeah.
if you go into the OMR compiler directory, the
Mhm.
doc section, and then look at coding standard or something, there I wrote a little
There's a
thing.
little thing about how to
There
get
is a
that set
commit
up.
hook there.
Yeah, because like, is it possible for that to get automatically set up like with the Git? Like you have the
No,
pre-commit
the
hook?
commit hooks are. I mean, we can put the hook in the Git repo, but you have
Yeah.
to copy it yourself. I don't think that like commit hooks are not something that you just get from the repo.
Okay, yeah. So I guess like you'd have to install the pre-commit hook like extension to Git, but then the file for running the pre-commit hook probably. I think it would be a bit easier if it was in the Git repo, right?
I like the idea of that kind of automation. The problem that I have, my own mental problem that I have is that because this was a relatively new change and a big change to our workflow, wasn't quite comfortable yet letting all those things happen. I want to know what's
Yeah,
being
it's going
changed.
on.
So I want to get that level of comfort, like that this whole thing is working,
Mm-hmm.
and then move into that extra stage of automation. I can certainly see
Yeah.
getting there, and my comfort will get there at some point.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's the direction we could possibly move in. But maybe there are others that have that same reservations that I do.
I did. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I got stuck in the end was because I was trying to modify. It's a branch that I've been developing. So it's the JB2 stuff that I've been developing for a long time, and I was trying to use this exercise to get more familiar with the coding format that we've come with, the standard that we've come up with, as well as trying to understand the tools and what they were doing. But I was unable to get it to work because the Docker file is kind of x86 based and not Mac OS AR64 based, and I didn't get around to resolving that issue, so I'm still kind of stuck in this merge hell on my branch. But yeah, I mean, it was basically trying to use it as the reason to make sure I understood what it was that was happening and doing before anything else. It doesn't work yet, so I can't put it as a pre-commit hook to get it working. In order to do that, I have to figure out how to get it working. So
I think there's like 153 open commits, right? Or open pull requests right now in OMR. I would guess that at least 120 of those, if not more, 130, I would say, predate the code format changes, which means that there's a whole. And now we have to probably go through some of those very old PRs, but there's a lot of people that are in the situation where, and they're also not all compiler ones, that may be in the situation where they have to get their code up to date.
Yeah.
Anything more than a year old, I would almost consider to be abandoned at this point, and it's just there for a reference. But
it's a very specific version of Clang format we need for this too, right?
Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's
Yeah, were you mentioning it?
yeah, even minor versions have it interprets it differently, which is really annoying. Because I understand major versions choosing to interpret it differently, but I tested, I think, Clang 8 point. I think we're doing 18.1.1 against like I think some other one that came up later, and it was like 0.4 difference between them, and there was a slight difference across the entire code base. It was only 4 files, but the fact that there was 4 files and it was a macro somewhere that changed, I was like, eventually, if we keep upgrading without just on a, if we keep upgrading on a iterative basis, you're gonna have a range of formats.
that's why I actually used the Docker file, because you scared me before you did the formatting that this was happening. And when I have 300 files, across 20 commits, I'm whatever I have.
I think
more than that, that really would bother me.
I think the safe thing to do would be like in the Docker file, you can see what wget it's using to pull the binary. You can just put this exact version.
Yeah, I guess I could upgrade it. Yeah.
I guess one thing worth noting before we do any automation, or one thing that really shouldn't happen, is that, like, let's say you run Clang format and some file outside of the range of files that you're working on gets reformatted. I don't know. The thing I'm trying to avoid is we should be careful adding things to the commit that shouldn't be added. Do you know what I'm saying here? So, like, if you run the pre-commit hook and you format some stuff, and I usually have some files in my repo which are just kind of things I really don't want to get committed, or just kind of garbage for whatever reason, right? Like, I only want the file staged for commit to have the format run on them. You know what I'm saying?
The correct. So one, you should look at the commit hook that's already written up. But two, the commit hook is based on the same. That commit hook is just in a doc, so it's not actually a script. But it's the same logic that the CI uses.
Okay.
To filter the file. So as long as you're following the same filter, consistent across both the CI, because the CI itself is problematic. So I think just like see what the
I'll go read the commit hook and then I'll go check the logic and I'll let you know if I have any concerns.
But that logic is exactly the same as the CI right now.
Sounds good. That's good. Yes.
Now the CI could need work, fair enough. But
is this in the I'm in the OMR doc right now. Where is it?
Let's go to docs and then compiler and
yes.
then, coding center.
Thank you.
Is there anybody on the phone that has any experience that they want to share, good or bad, with the formatting? As Erwin said, I mean, one of the ultimate goals here is to maybe make a recommendation that he can go ahead with the plan to do this in another project like OpenJ9, have a reasonable chance of success, and we'll be reasonably happy with that. I do like, actually, as someone that does work in both regularly, I do notice the difference between, oh crap, I'm in OpenJ9 now, I need to put my braces, and I need to put my braces over here, and only 3 spaces for the indentation, but I can go wild with the line length,
I mean, are we looking to talk specific points about the specific decisions made inside of the Clang format file, or is that something that we're not?
No, because I think that one is because the file's been written. I think to discuss that would require like
10 hours.
It's going to get subjective.
Well, exactly. We've had this. So I don't know if when you started following this saga, but we've been when we started this effort like 7 years ago. Initially, there were a lot of opinions about well, not just like spaces versus tabs, but that this comment can't exist on that line; it has to be on a separate line, and you need a space after this, and all kinds of things like that. And no one is ever going to agree on it. You're just going to find differences of opinion. So unless it's something very like you can definitely point to an example in the code, this is really ugly for whatever reason, we need to fix it. There's other things like what Henry fixed the other day, where a lot of the diagrams are all munched up because Clang doesn't know what it's doing, or doesn't know that it's a diagram, and so formats it.
Oh, inside the comments or whatever.
You can turn the formatting off and on around the diagrams, but the ASCII diagrams end up sane. So
okay.
So any of the ones on your list happen to be very things that are making the code look really ugly, then maybe we can talk about those. But
I highly doubt that anything that I don't have a list. I just have some stuff off the top of my head, and I highly doubt any of those are universal enough to warrant discussion here. You know what I'm saying?
This one was more about the process.
The
change development process. And like for example, I need to figure out. So I have a Windows machine, but
Yeah.
I develop on WSL2, which is
Mhm.
Linux, and so I just use Linux binaries. Everything is, but I know people like Marys and others use Windows
Yes.
and may use VS Code directly outside. So I need to we got this in, but I don't know if I have answers for like Mac because I don't have access to a Mac.
Yeah.
Or like I guess I have access to Windows, so I can look into Windows. But
On Mac, you can usually build most Linux binaries, right? And I'm pretty sure Clang falls on that list. I mean, I can go get it set up and let you know how it goes. I'm looking at I read the pre-commit hook, and I'm just wondering why are you running Clang form out of a Docker instead of just
I don't know the Docker. I have to put it there so that it's just for people to know, hey, this version.
okay, yeah.
Right. The CI uses Docker, for example. So
Okay, yeah.
there was a reason for that. It was so we didn't have to install it on all the machines.
I see. Okay, cool. Maybe it's worth. Is there? I mean, I quickly skimming over the code format, code standard. It doesn't seem like there's a if you could add a comment or something like with the specific version of Clang format, just so I can try running it on my machine, that would be nice. Like
I mean, just take a look at the
the CI. Sure. Oh yeah, I can look at the doc. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
the Docker file is sort of the de facto like standard on what Clang.
What version of everything we're using? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Because that Docker file is also what the CI uses. So
Yeah.
I think it's just consistent.
Cool. Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I'll give people one last opportunity to make give any feedback that they want. And if you don't want to provide it now, in the in the Slack channel, the OMR general Slack channel, I didn't put it there. Well, if you have feedback for the OpenJ9 issue and you happen to be part of the OpenJ9 project, then you can easily find the issue that Erwin created for that. So if you have any specific feedback that you don't want to say here, you can certainly drop it into there. Given what I've heard here today, I think he's probably going to proceed down that path at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I think I
Last
have
call.
one PR to try and clean up the Docker file right now a little bit. Maybe try and remove that error message that comes up. And then for OpenJ9, it'd be a little different because ideally we would just use what I don't want to duplicate the stuff. I want to use what's in OMR. So it's a little trickier to pull the stuff from here, but I want this to sort of, especially because the compiler is basically they're one takes the other in some sense, or one extends the other. I want if OMR is where the standard is defined, I want the projects to use the de facto standard and not have to copy and then risk things going out of sync. Right. So that's just sort of my general plan, but I'll try and get to it at some point.
All right, we got Clang format installed.
Lots of feedback there.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to move on from this topic then. If there's nothing else. Okay. So our second topic today is a proposal from Kevin that he needs to take us through. So I'll turn it over to him.
Yep. Let me quickly pull up the issue and then I'll talk it through. But essentially, like I'm just
Issue link.
yeah.
It's right on the. Oh, didn't I put it there? Oh, I cut. Oh, I cut and pasted it.
Yep. I got it on my laptop.
Are you sharing your screen?
I don't know. Should I? Like, how do I?
Well, you can on Teams. You just share.
Oh, yeah,
Your whole screen. Just share.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me get into the
You'll
Teams.
have to get into Teams first.
Install it.
I mean, while I'm doing this, essentially, like the quick verbal summary, is that there is this certain type of option that let me mute myself. Yep, there is. Sounds good. I can quickly share screen now. Sorry, now it's making me open settings and give it permission and all this. Yes.
I don't think you go to enough meetings. We need to fix that.
The first time I've ever heard someone say that. Don't go to enough meetings.
Yes. I gotta quick reopen. Yes, leave. Might actually be easiest if someone else who had it up just shared their screen. Might be the best solution.
Find it.
Thank you.
Too much going on right now. Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
The issue number, by the way, everyone, is 8,030.
Mhm.
That's fine.
I can send you the link on Slack.
No, I have that. I can't find the window in my 4,000 windows that I've used. It's not showing me enough.
That sounds like a more complicated.
It's not showing me enough detail. I unfortunately can't share my screen, so.
Okay, I think I just got it.
Okay, I think he did. Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Perfect.
Right? Yeah, so I guess this is the quick rundown. So there's essentially so within OMR options, the way it works is that we have this big list where for every single valid option in OMR, there's a struct representing all the information you know about it. And one of the fields in the struct is the callback function we use to parse it. And there's a couple of common ones we've written, and one of the ones we've written is this thing called limitOption, which is only used by OpenJ9, but that's kind of besides the point. And essentially, what I think limitOptions are supposed to do is they let you essentially construct these things called filters. And what a filter is, it's basically like a method. Well, it's like a hash table of binary search trees, which you can essentially use to filter out certain methods for certain decisions. Like we have one global compilation filter, which we use to implement exclude the option. So basically, all of the various options add regexes to this global compilation filter object, and then whenever you go to compile a method, you go and check this global object, and you check the name of the method against the hash table of binary search trees in order to see if your regex is, or if your method name matches the filter. And my proposal is, I think the system's too convoluted, right? And I think that there's a lot of there's a ton of overhead and so many levels of abstraction that exist between it took me a long time to figure out that was what was going on. There's a bunch of issues I've listed. I can kind of go over. The first one is that it's over convoluted and a bit hard to navigate through. The next one is that the way you access this this big these filters is for the rest of the OMR options, you use OMR : options : get command options, or the JIT options or AOT options, which you can then access that way, and there's a consistent API for doing that. But for these specific limit options, you can't access it using the command line options. You have to use a different object, which is called trdebug. And trdebug is not it's mainly if you look at the other methods in that object, there are things like print stack trace. It seems to be a object which is for debugging purposes, right? So the fact that there are command line options which are useful for actually controlling the compiler is a bit odd, right? In terms of that decision. And
I think the reason for that is that you use the exclude and limit stuff specifically for debug.
Oh, okay.
You don't normally do it for normal running. You can use it to, if you hit a crash, you would try and limit which compilation of which method caused it. So that's the reason it's on debug. It necessarily makes sense, but that's why I think
Yeah.
essentially it was out of there.
I can kind of get that justification, but if you look at the other OMR options, there's like, if you look at the print strings, it'll like indicate whether it's a debug option or an optimization option or whatever, right? And so there are tons of debugging things that live inside of the command line option stuff, right? So I don't think there's an argument to say that we should move all that stuff over to the debug object. I think that we should just have every option
I
live
think
on the options.
debug in that context,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
means JIT has been built with the debug processor directive, which we don't do anymore.
Mhm.
We can, but when we used to have builds that did that,
Yeah.
and it unlocks some extra checking usually that happens during debug, which might unlock some of those options as well. That's my thinking about what that was supposed to mean and whether or not it's actually that way now.
Yeah.
But I think D was supposed to be for a debug
Mhm.
enabled option.
Yes. You
Is that
guys,
right?
I'm pulling up the structure of options right now. You guys can't see my editor right now. I'm only sharing the one screen. It doesn't really
It's fine.
matter.
It's right.
It doesn't matter. The only point I'm going to make is it doesn't seem like these options are guarded by macros, right? And so they're indicated as like, debug options, but they're not like, actually a part of this debug build, right? Like I assume that maybe what it's for is like if someone's trying to, like for a client attempting to debug their JIT application, they can use these options as opposed to, the debug object, which is more meant for us to debug on a C, like on like the source code. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference between like clients debugging their Java application.
Yeah, debug object is also to debug just the JIT code.
Oh, okay.
It's just I think it was an encapsulation.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think debug, for example, if you do log equals, a lot of the tracing, I'm not sure about now, but
The history of it was we actually used to have all the debug in Java,
Mhm.
the J9 Java, all the debug capabilities used to live in a separate DLL, called separate shared object altogether.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that was we needed to get the size of the JIT down as small as possible because this was intended to be used in embedded environments
I see.
and things like that, where space was really at a premium.
Yeah.
So debugging is only needed in exceptional circumstances. So we removed it entirely from the JIT. Needed it, you just load up the DL. So it's got this weird, but that's no longer the case.
Yeah.
It got merged back, but all that weird interface between, like assuming it's in a different object, still exists, and it's a very. Actually, I'm kind of taking a shot at fixing that, but that's going to be a bit of a longer term thing. But anyway, that's a bit of the history behind the debug object. It's mapping with the debug shared object.
Yeah. I guess the fact that it's a lot older, like, from the original J9 version makes a lot of sense because I guess another thing I was going to bring up is that like we have our own manual implementation of binary tree search and we have our own manual implementation of like, a hash table, right? And, it doesn't seem like a very good collision-free hash function. It's just like some index.
5 hash tables in the JIT.
Yeah.
Not mistaken.
Right. And so, I think, yeah, like and there's like a whole bunch of memory allocation going on in there, like manual memory management and stuff, right? Like and the way we construct our objects is a bit weird. Like we're not using constructors. We are like, we are allocating a region of memory and then casting a pointer to the object type. You know what I'm saying? So
That's purposeful.
Oh, okay. Then.
Well, it's also not always true. I think a lot of times we're still using placement new. Like we'll allocate the storage, but we'll use placement new.
Yeah, so we're not using a placement new. We're just casting the pointer type, right? Which is a bit odd, right? But if that's intentional, that's intentional, right? But I guess the point I was making about this code, right, is like it doesn't seem like because now that we have this new regex library and we have like support for applying vertical bars between multiple regexes, the proposal I was like the suggestion I was making is for all of these filters, right? You could actually just replace them with a stack of regexes or an array of regexes, right? Or one big regex where you like combine with vertical bars between them. I don't know which one's actually going to be faster between those two things because I think there might be some weirdness with the matching in there.
So can you just clarify, what did you mean by we have a new regex?
I mean,
library?
I don't know if it's new, but we have our own like OMR regex, like simple regex, right? Like we have this library that exists in.
Oh, definitely not new.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
That's 25 years old now.
Okay, yeah, right. So we have this regex library, right? And we can use that to match like pretty sophisticated patterns, right? And so I think the correct way we should do this option is instead of using this, hash table of binary search trees, we should just have like, you know, like I guess because the reason, like my guess for the reason why this exists is so that in your XJIT options you can specify exclude in one method and then add a comma and exclude a second method and add a comma and exclude another method like repeatedly. And if you want to replicate that functionality, I think the easiest thing to do would just be like exclude, specify a regex, and then basically the second time you see the option, instead of replacing the regex, which is how we currently handle regexes, you combine them by adding a vertical bar in between them, right? And then having both regexes. And then this basically lets you specify a collection of methods you want to filter, and then at the point where the decision is made to, compile or not compile, you can just pull the one regex, which basically specifies all the methods you don't want to compile, and then just match against that regex, which would be pretty similar to how the rest of, like there's a lot of.
Do you know if that's how it works for a fact? Like if you have multiple exclude options on the command line, will it aggregate them all, or will we just take the rightmost one? I wasn't.
For exclude, we aggregate them, but
Really?
for exclude doesn't use that right. The regex, I think he's suggesting to replace
Yeah.
with. Exclude does weird stuff with the filters and everything. Like,
Yeah. Like the.
Okay.
So exclude, so limit equals exclude equals a limit file are all like special things. Don't inline equals is it uses the regular the simple regex or whatever he's talking about. They're implemented differently for some reason. So limit equals and exclude equals are special. I think that's the point you're trying to get across.
Yes, they
The
are.
point is you're trying to say that you can just simply use the simple regex, like
for all the other stuff we're using.
I don't know if there is a historical reason or behind that or a function.
Do you know?
Because the limit, I mean, some of these are pretty old.
In terms of the binary search tree, the one thing I can think of is, was that done because when we use a limit file, the number of methods we have are so huge that if it was a big array, it was too memory prohibitive? Like, is that
Maybe. I mean, this is probably going back to like Streeter time
He wrote that stuff.
right? So
Yeah.
that's
so you have to just see if
Like just try
it doesn't
running.
lost to like when you have a limit file, because when you have a limit file, it's a vlog, and the vlog
Yeah.
can be
thousands long.
lines. So when you first start, usually you binary search. So even if there's like 10,000 lines, you're talking about 5,000.
Yeah, like a lot of thousands, right? So yeah.
So 3,000 methods, each of them being its own.
And you don't want a single regex that's
Yeah.
10,000 lines worth of methods, because it'll be like you'll be getting the exact entire signature of every method, and then like this or that or this or that or
okay.
10,000 of them. So
Yeah, so you just look at I think it's the limit equals is usually like only put 3 or 4 at a time, or maybe we'll put something start, but the limit file is where things get stressed out.
So then we could have a data structure for limit files where you have thousands of methods, right? But I guess the other thing I would advocate for is probably using something out of the standard library rather than having our own implementation. Because if we're gonna rewrite it, right, like we could probably save ourselves like, because like I think like there's a file called limitfile.cpp, right, which is what houses like most of this code, right? And like the majority of that file is like, our own implementation of binary search, our own implementation of hash table, like stuff like this, right? Along with a couple like I guess another thing worth mentioning is that the only method that actually uses all of this code is a method called I think it's called can method be compiled, or the method can be compiled, like some permutation of those words, right? And then that method is only called by like a couple places in the code, right? So like the reason why I know there's a lot of like everyone's telling me there's a lot of interest around refactoring options, right? And the reason why I kind of identified this piece of it is just because like it's very isolated from the rest of the code. Like there's a very small number of options that actually use this, right? And so we could probably it'd be very easy to change the like all of the code, like the API for those specific pieces of code, and I think that would be like relatively Like we could cut out a lot is what I'm trying to say here, right? And it would probably save some, you know what I'm saying?
You know, there's two ways to look at that. I mean, it's easy to replace, but it's also a pretty foundational diagnostic.
Right, a lot of people use
You're
it.
calling it on every, like one of those two methods is being called on every method that's being compiled by the JIT
Yeah.
ever, right? So even when it's not being used, like even when this limit file functionality is not being used, it's going through that.
Path,
So,
yeah.
so you're changing something that
Yeah.
everything uses all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that the code stuff you're talking about is valid. You know, it's trying to see where we can use SDL, which even that is not super trivial because you have to use our allocators, so you have to know what the full
Full signatures.
template signature is.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you'd have to basically do performance. Like you have to see what the comp CPU increases and
Yeah.
what the CPU increases. But just because even though it's the standard thing to do, because we've done so much bespoke stuff over the years, our thing has gotten sort of good in that world. And when you change it up, sometimes it'll require other work in order to
make sure that it's actually
So you have to just evaluate everything and then show the evaluation results and stuff and
okay.
justify.
Cool.
I think that would be the big. If performance isn't affected, I don't know why people wouldn't want better code.
Yeah.
But sometimes the reason we don't go down that path is because the cost to performance might be higher than the
benefit from the code.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's usually the only reason.
Yeah.
Well, or the risk of torquing something that everyone's using.
That too. Yeah. It changes the functionality in a way that no one's expecting. Like for example,
And you only find it in a diagnostic scenario where
right.
it's important to figure out what's going on. Yeah. Sorry, I'm sounding like I'm being persistent.
No,
I'm just trying to point out other concerns.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly reasonable.
I will say that the one of the areas that I think that we will eventually have to address, I'm not saying that might even be part of this or not, is maybe something you've already mentioned, which is the overhead of the regex processing and how much that can impact the running of the application, right? Like if someone just happens to have a filter on the command line, that can change the behavior in ways that are not really explainable. Part of it though is the overhead of just doing the regex comparison every time and that. So I think that path has not really been looked at. I can almost say for well over 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was some, like Mark was saying, this is foundational stuff. It's been a workhorse. We've gotten a lot out of it, but I think that there are some cracks in there that we probably need to look into and fix the performance of.
Doesn't this stuff intersect with the option set stuff as well? Is here, remember that you could set that there was a way that you could connect the limit file to the option sets.
You used to be able to say, like, you have plus for in the vlog,
like +1,
+2, and then in your command line you would
could
have a 2,
yes, yeah.
and then an option set that would apply to those methods. I don't even know if that works.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody
It
ever
used
used
to
it.
work,
Yeah,
but we had some fairly. This is definitely one of the advantages of J9 over something like Hotspot was some of the debuggability.
Yeah.
That was one of the features that was like the ability to control which methods get compiled and how they got compiled was one of those things. But anyway, so I was saying about the regex is there might be some meat on that bone in terms of improving performance there.
Yep.
I mean, just in terms of we've gone kind of back and forth over the years on using more of the standard template library. We're in a very not consistent state at all. We've got some pockets that use it in the code, others not using it in the code. One of the reasons we wrote all our own implementations at one point were they were simple and we understood how they worked and we had very good control over their performance. And maybe just as big of a reason back then was the fact that they didn't even exist in the
library
because it was written around 99, 2000 kind of thing. So you wouldn't find them in
They were buggy at the time. They were there, but
And they were buggy.
they were buggy at the time
And buggy. And at one point,
and not consistent across all platforms.
and at one point, we weren't dependent on the C runtime being there. So we had to implement everything from scratch and use the port library to do any sort of IO or any sort of interaction with the operating system. And that's, again, a very, we haven't quite kept up with that ideal in J9, but at one point you couldn't even depend on there being a C runtime there. So you couldn't use printfs, you couldn't use Alloc or things like that. So, so I don't know. I mean, some of the concerns that Erwin raised about allocators and that, like our whole memory allocator story is painful, and how it intersects with how the way that J9 OMR manages memory intersects with the standard template library. We have bridges for that, but it's not super great.
Yeah, I confess I'm not a big fan of that. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but the requirement that we only use the memory that the runtime gives us makes us begin to have to understand how the STL
uses
stuff
allocates. Yeah, okay.
and the STL stuff is like, I don't know, there's probably 5 people on the planet who really understand how the standard template library is put together. Like it's quite, it's not verbose. Like it's not well documented. It's not well understood, and it's complicated as hell when you start getting problems in it. And plus, it brings in this dependency that's kind of awkward to manage with the standard C++, lib standard C++.
Yeah, we still have issues with version compatibilities with the C standard, but whatever version happens to be. And in fact, do we still bundle on AIX or something? Don't we bundle in lib C++?
I think we have to statically link it, don't we? Because otherwise we fall victim to GPL.
Yeah, there's some.
So you have to statically link it to avoid use of one of the linking exceptions to not become GPL licensed.
So I guess an alternate suggestion, if using the STL isn't possible, we could still retain the core algorithmic logic, which, the hash table, the binary search tree and all that. But the API on top of that, I think could probably benefit from a change. Like specifically just 1, put it on the options object, and 2, have a more, because if you just put if you put the compilation and relocation filters directly on the option object, right? And then you have, you put the methods to basically query it to see if a certain method matches a filter on the compilation filter, which is on the options object, then that makes the API a lot more consistent, as opposed to now, if you want to check to see if your method can be compiled, you have to call some esoteric function on the debug object, which, is a bit, I guess for me, was a bit difficult to figure that out, right? Because in contrast, for every other option, I would just go look at the options object and try and figure out what, which basically method to call to read the option, right? And when I was looking at the limit options, I had to go basically follow the whole trace of look at the callback to parse it, look at every place where that callback is called, kind of go see all of the functions it calls and figure out exactly, it mutates this global object called compilation filters, and then look at all the instances of compilation filters and see all the getters and setters for that. It was quite the trace to go figure out, right? As opposed to just putting it on the options object and then having the querying method be there as well, right? Because they would make the API a bit more consistent. But
It's a mild misnomer to say the options object. But
I was curious.
Sure,
Are you talking about the global one?
2 global ones, and then there's also the option set.
In this particular case,
are
you talking about having them on the 2 global ones or on the pro compilation ones?
That's a good question.
It's like, for example, in J9, the place where we check if we can do it, we haven't created the pro compilation object yet. So down some, I don't know how OMR does it. In OMR might be okay too, but downstream projects might not. So I think you ran into this where the place where we check, we didn't have a per
Yeah,
compilation object yet, but we did have the global objects.
Yeah. probably two.
I don't know.
One for JIT, one for AOT.
Oh, okay, that's,
Yeah,
One that has the -X JIT options and the global
Yeah.
-X JIT, and one that has the global -X AOT.
right.
The reason why the options one doesn't exist yet is because you haven't started the compilation at the point where he's talking about.
Yeah.
You're deciding whether you're gonna compile something, so
They want to
you
filter.
use the global one.
Like you could create the options object, but it might be thrown away because you might realize I don't want to compile this, but now you've created an object that wastes a bunch of time. That's all.
Yeah, in which case probably then it's probably best to keep them global, but just have getters and setters put on on any of the options objects, the function that you call to access this, compilation filter thing, right? And it just returns a pointer to the global object. You know what I'm saying? So that way,
That
you don't
might work because the color probably knows if it's doing a JIT compile or if it's doing AOT compile, so it knows which object to check. Probably. Oh, but it,
Well, I think the
no,
point right
because he
now
wants
is
to
figure
loads,
out which
the
one.
loads would still be on the AOT, so yeah.
well, I mean, yeah.
And AOT compiles would be on the AOT one too.
Well, that's part of what I think he's doing because the AOT compiler not right now. That's why it's so
Because
complicated.
they're done by the JIT.
Yeah. No. It's still the next AOT
Yeah, that would.
options, but because there's only two filters, there's reload filters and compilation filters.
Yeah.
XAOT exclude also stops JIT compilations and
Right.
vice versa.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it that's the annoying thing about it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because we check both.
No, it's a static. Compilation filter, reload filters are static, so they're just common.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
They're not stored on.
Whereas I think the regular expression stuff he's doing, making them instance fields, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, the regular expression would be stored on the options object,
Right?
right?
Be an instance of each global.
Yes, right? And so basically you could specify for the global object. You're right, you know what I'm saying?
We had to create load exclude
Yeah.
as well as exclude, right? Okay.
Well, yeah. So load is.
So that's because I didn't bifurcate the compilation of filters when I did the options objects.
Oh, I tried, at one point I tried looking into it, but the problem is there are so many APIs where it's a binary, I would need to change it into a ternary, that it was actually a non-trivial amount of work to make it a 3 filter.
Trust me, it was a non-trivial amount of work to split them in 2 in the first place. Trust me. I took a lot of shit for that.
Yeah.
But everyone was happy because I taught them a new word.
Bifurcate.
Bifurcate. Nobody knew the word bifurcate.
More you learn.
Source of good verbs.
But yeah. I don't know, put it on the options objects. Okay. I now get the point that we need a better way to query a large number of strings to see if you match any of them, right? So I guess what it is really a try. That's what the binary search trees are for. You just actually I don't think it's a try. Sorry, it is just a regular binary search tree because they use string comp that function of -1 if it's lexicographically less 0 if it's equal 1, and then they search the tree like that. And there's 2 versions where it's just the method name and then the method class and signature name, and they do the string comp on all 3, and then based on the results of all 3, you know what I'm saying, right? So maybe I can kind of understand the argument for keeping that object around, but I still think that there's a pretty good argument that the API for accessing it should probably change, right? Because there's a lot of the sheer amount of indirection from both the options and the part of the code that actually access the options and the compilation filters object. There's a lot of levels of abstraction between those two, which they can probably be cut down a bit.
That's a good incremental step
Yeah.
to work because, like Mark was saying, you're fiddling with one of the legs on the stool here,
Yeah.
and you have to be somewhat careful about it. So either
I get verbs, you get metaphors.
sorry.
Yeah, an English over here.
So no, but I mean, the other thing before you went down that path, I was going to say, well, if there was any way that you could get the existing mechanism and a new mechanism coexisting, so you could switch between them. If for whatever reason our service guys are having trouble, or anybody else is having trouble with the new, you can always fall back to the old one.
Yeah.
We don't always like to do that because you end up having two things in the code and you don't want to do that for too long, but just from a safety and.
Yeah.
But if you're going the path where you're just changing the API that and leaving all the real meat of it unchanged, maybe that's a good first step toward change.
Yeah, I think probably changing the API first is probably the best step because that will also make like if we want to have two solutions coexisting, we'd want the size of those two solutions to be as small as possible. So ideally, we want as much to them to share as much of the like. We would want the two solutions to share as much code as possible, if you get what I'm saying, right? So if we make them share the same API, then it should be easier to hot swap one with the other in in either case, right? Yeah.
All right, any thoughts from anyone on the call on this? Kind of dominating the conversation here. Yeah, I guess you can proceed with, I mean, a proof of concept kind of thing would be,
Yeah.
I mean, it's always helpful to see code, so.
Yeah, sure. So I'll first make like a PR where I'll swap the API and see if that works. And then after that, we can discuss what the actual next step should be for like
Make sure that code is formatted.
yeah, sure. I'll get the pre-commit hook working, right? And then yeah, that's probably the plan.
Okay. All right, if there is no other discussion on this from anyone, thank you, Gavin, for taking us through that. That's the last topic on our agenda this week. So I've already got the agenda, proposed agenda for next time in 2 weeks. If anybody wants to add something to that, just feel free to make an update there. And we'll talk again then. All right, thanks everyone. All right.